close and personal. This footage, apparently filmed on board a Ukrainian unmanned drone, headed straight for a Russian warship. Then the camera cuts out. Another video later showed the ship being towed to shore close to Russia's Black Sea naval base at Novorossiysk, though Russia insisted 2 sea drones had been repelled. The attack on a port exporting millions of barrels of oil every week is the latest in a string of Ukrainian operations taking the fight to Russian soil. This was the aftermath of a drone attack in central Moscow earlier this week, the second in just 3 days. The Russian president today chairing a meeting on strengthening internal stability. His forces have been targeting Ukraine's ports, damaging and destroying tens of thousands of tons of grain after pulling out from a diplomatic deal that allowed Ukraine to export the commodity.
It is very important for the world not to get used to this Russian terror. Every hit is a common problem, not only for Ukraine, but also for all of those in the world whose stability Russia is trying to destroy by attacking our ports and infrastructure.
On the battlefield, Ukrainian soldiers have been grinding on as the much-trailed counter-offensive continues, though so far they've only made modest gains. They've been held up by fortified Russian defences prepared over the winter. Chief amongst them, fields littered with mines.
We lose one sapper every day, either wounded or dead. It's a dangerous job, and even if a brigade is advancing, or whether around 12 guys go out on their mission, it's always the sappers that go first. It's very dangerous.
There are 3 main directions Ukrainian forces have been attempting to push forward: towards the city of Bakhmut in the east, around the borders of Zaporizhia and Donetsk provinces, and down towards Melitopol and the coast. But progress has been slow.
When you dig in, zoom into Zaporizhia Oblast, that's where most experts expect Ukraine to put its focus because it wants to break that land bridge. But there's trenches, there's mines, and they're not able to move because they don't have air cover, and they don't have sufficient mining equipment that can move through, and they also need heavier bombs.
Away from the front lines, US Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie was in Bucha, paying his respects to the dead. His rivals, like Donald Trump, are less keen on continuing the current enormous levels of military support for Ukraine, adding to the pressure around this counter-offensive. Ukrainian workers this week began taking down the Soviet hammer and sickle from a monument to the motherland in Kyiv. The country's determination in resisting the Russian assault shows no sign of wavering.
Well, I'm joined now live from Kyiv by Yuri Sak, who's an advisor to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. Thanks for joining us tonight. The counteroffensive is being widely described now in the Western media as going slow. How would you describe it?
We describe it as steady and dynamic. This is a very long front line that we're dealing with. These are millions of mines, and just so that you understand, according to the information that we have, in some places on 1 square meter, there are 5 mines. Now, this is the unprecedented level of mining, which means that oftentimes we're not even able to use the equipment. So the demining has to actually be done manually by our soldiers. And if you consider that every time our soldiers are on the minefield trying to clear the path for our troops, there are immediately artillery fire, drones above their heads. So this is a very, very difficult and challenging task. But having said that, we are moving forward. And just today, we have had news that in some places we have broken through the first line of defense. Now, that means that, things are not, and we, of course, we value the life of our soldiers. Now, this is the most valuable priority for us. This is why we are not going to send them to die. We'd rather go slower, but we will make sure that we achieve maximum results with minimum losses.
But the feeling has been, as you know, that you need to push forward. Russia only needs to freeze the line. And at the moment, Russia seems to be getting its way.
Well, if you look at what is happening in Russia, if we go back to your earlier report about the targeting of the ship in Novorossiysk, if you look at what happens in other parts of Russia, you know, we have to be very creative when trying to understand our counteroffensive. We have very capable military command. We have very capable special services. We have a very capable army of people who, as we speak, are making new weapons for Ukraine's victory. Drones, water drones, naval drones, air drones. So we always ask our partners for two things, weapons and patience. We are confident in our victory, and we will just keep at it.
I mean, that's interesting. So these drone attacks at sea and on land are Ukrainian special forces?
As our president has said today in his televised address, we all Ukrainians, we are very grateful to our secret services for actually taking the war back to where it came from. Live by the sword, die by the sword. We've said that so many times. And what we have to stress is that we always stick by our commitment to our international partners. If we said that we will not use the weapons that is provided to Ukraine by our partners, we will stick by this commitment. So we're using, you know, whenever we attack outside of the Ukrainian territory, it is done only by our own homemade weapons.
Yeah. Now that Russian warship is clearly a military target. What about the drone attacks on the buildings in Moscow? I mean, there may be government departments in those buildings, but there may also be civilians. Are they legitimate targets?
For good or worse, I'm not authorized to comment on the issue of the incident in Moscow. Our security services have very deep intelligence. And of course, one thing that we have proven time and again is that we are not like Russians. We are not fighting civilians. We are only targeting those objects which have potential to strengthen our enemy and inflict harm and damage and destruction on our land. So these are our primary targets, and we will continue to do that.
I mean, just today, you know, we're looking at those images of minefields. A few weeks ago, we were looking at the great disappointment of Ukraine in terms of NATO's position. I mean, do you really feel that you're getting the support that you need at the moment?
Well, actually, you know, if you are referring to the NATO summit in Vilnius, we think that that NATO summit was actually historical because Ukraine did receive a very clear indication that as soon as this war is over, as soon as Ukraine wins this war, we will become a member of NATO. And since day one of this war, we have been supported by our allies, by the US, by the UK, by all other European countries, Germany, France, and we are very grateful for that support. The Western weapons that we receive, they are actually helping us save lives. They are helping our army fight a smart war and achieve results. So, of course, there are certain things which we are still requesting and we haven't received. Like, for example, the long-range missiles. We have received the Storm Shadows from the UK, for which we are very, very grateful. But at the same time, we're still asking for ATACMS long-range missiles from the US, and we hope we will get them. The same goes for the F-16s. The person who was on your program just before me, she rightly said that without air superiority, it is very difficult for our army to progress faster because Russians continue to have air dominance along the front line. They use their air power as advantage. So we're hoping that the training of our pilot for F-16s will begin soon this month in August, and we hope to get the F-16s as soon as possible. But by and large, the Western support of Ukraine has been tremendous, and we are very grateful for that.